Imagine standing at the edge of a forest at 42, the air thick with the scent of pine, the world's hum fading into a question that keeps you awake. Is this really my life? Society has fed you a half-truth, a story that crowns youth as life's peak, whispers that your 30s mark the start of decline, and insists that by 42 you should settle into a predictable rhythm. It's a tale crafted to keep you compliant, obedient, unquestioning. And the cruelest part? You've believed it since you were a child, soaking up every word from billboards, sitcoms, and well-meaning relatives who asked, "What do you want to be when you grow up?" As if your value hinged on a single answer. But what if the real story, the one nobody dares to tell, begins when you realize the script you followed isn't yours? This lie isn't subtle. It's woven into every corner of your life, reinforced by the pressure to achieve in your 20s, stabilize in your 30s, and coast by 42. I think of Clara, now 45, who spent her youth chasing a corner office, believing it would define her. She'd sit at her sleek desk, awards gleaming, but at night, over a glass of wine, she'd confess, "I feel like I'm acting in someone else's movie." That's the trap. The world insists your 20s are for dreaming, your 30s for achieving. And by 42, you're meant to be content with routine. But what if life truly starts when you see that everything you've built is a reflection of others' expectations? Carl Jung called this moment, often at 42, the midpoint of life, a time when the weight of those expectations cracks like ice underfoot. It's not a decline, but a revolution. Picture Elias, a 42-year-old accountant, finding an old college journal filled with sketches and poems. As he read, tears fell, not from sorrow, but from realizing he'd buried his true self to fit the mold of success. That fracture is where the lie unravels, where you ask, how much of my life is mine? At 42, something shifts. It's not a thunderclap or a cinematic epiphany, just a quiet tremor, a crack in the polished facade you've spent decades crafting. The things that once drove you, promotions, likes, the perfect image, feel empty. You might be in a meeting, nodding along, but inside you're screaming, "Is this all there is?" This is what Jung called the start of individuation, the journey of peeling away masks to uncover your true self. Take Sophie, a 43-year-old teacher who was always the reliable one. She never rebelled, never said no, always had dinner ready. But one evening, grading papers, she gazed at a sunset painting the sky in orange and pink. She realized she couldn't recall the last time she'd done something for herself. Not for her students, her kids, or her husband, but for the woman who once loved painting and dancing in the rain. That night, she dug out an old canvas and began to paint, hands shaking with fear and joy. It wasn't about the art. It was about reclaiming her soul. This phase is terrifying because it forces you to face the gap between who you are and who you've pretended to be. The rewards you chased, status, security, applause, lose their luster. You feel the weight of the masks, the professional mask hiding your doubts, the happy spouse mask concealing your dreams, the perfect parent mask burying your need for freedom. I met Leo, 44, in a coffee shop, stirring his drink absently. "I've built this version of myself," he said. "If I let it go, what's left?" That question haunts you. Who am I when no one's watching? It's a moment that feels like standing at a cliff's edge, the wind tugging at your back, daring you to leap. At 42, you reach a crossroads. The fracture in your facade reveals a truth. Much of your life has been shaped by others' expectations. You have two paths. The first is to cling to the familiar, to patch the cracks and keep playing your role. It's safe, comfortable, known. Most choose this, not because they love it, but because the alternative is daunting. The second path is to step into the unknown, to shed the masks and start anew. This is the path of awakening, and it's not easy. Consider Maya, a 45-year-old lawyer with a life that looked perfect, a high-powered career, a stunning home, a packed social calendar. But at 42, she woke each morning with a knot in her stomach, dreading the day. One night, at a friend's art gallery, she met Inez, a 50-year-old sculptor who'd left a corporate job to chase her passion. Inez's hands were rough from clay, her eyes alive with purpose. "I was terrified when I quit," she told Maya, "but staying in a life that wasn't mine was scarier." That conversation sparked something. Maya began journaling, digging into her true desires. A year later, she took a leave to study environmental law, a passion she'd ignored because it wasn't prestigious. Choosing this path means facing the emptiness Jung described, a freefall, where you're no longer defined by your job, roles, or others' opinions. But that void isn't the end. It's the beginning, a space to rebuild from your own truth. The question is, what would I do if I weren't afraid of failing? The journey of individuation is solitary, not because you're alone, but because no one can walk it for you. There's no manual, no guru, no shortcut to your true self. It's a process of trial and error, of sitting in the silence of your existence and listening. This is where the work begins. And it's not glamorous, it's messy, raw, personal. I think of Ravi, a 46-year-old chef who ran his family's restaurant, a legacy from his father. At 42, he realized he'd never asked if he loved cooking, or if he was just fulfilling his father's dream. One night after closing, he sat in the empty kitchen, spices lingering in the air, and admitted he wanted to write. He started small, scribbling stories in a notebook. The first were awful, he laughed, but each word was a step toward himself. He joined a writing workshop, meeting others rediscovering their passions. His family didn't get it. His mother called it a midlife crisis, but Ravi persisted, not because it was easy, but because it was true. This phase demands courage, not just to find your essence, but to let go of what no longer fits. Relationships built on the old, you may fade. Conversations that filled your time feel trivial. You might feel isolated, seeing a world others don't. But this solitude is necessary. It's where you learn to trust your voice, to build an identity that's yours alone. When you start shedding those layers, something extraordinary happens. The world changes, not because it's different, but because you see it clearly. Goals that consumed you, a bigger house, a better title, seem absurd. Fears that paralyzed you, failure, judgment, lose their power. It's like stepping out of a fog. Lila, a 44-year-old marketing executive, felt this shift. At 42, she questioned her high-stress job that left no time for her love of gardening. She started tending a community garden on weekends, the soil under her nails, the sound of morning birds, the sight of seedlings grounding her in a way her office never did. Her priorities shifted. She stopped caring about office politics or social media. She began hosting garden workshops, teaching others to grow food. Old friends drifted away, but she found new ones who shared her values. "It's like I was blind before," she said, her face glowing. "Now I see what matters." This phase can be lonely. You're no longer aligned with the world's noise. You see the artifices, people chasing empty goals, relationships built on convenience. But this clarity is a gift. It lets you choose who to surround yourself with, what to pursue, how to live. In that alignment, you find peace, not the fleeting kind from a promotion, but the deep kind from living authentically. The beauty and challenge of awakening is that it's not a destination, but a journey. There's no moment where you say, "I've found myself." Each stage of life brings new layers to shed, new truths to uncover. But once you've woken up, you can't go back. Take Amir, a 47-year-old architect who at 42 realized his career was a compromise to please his parents. His heart was in urban farming. At 43, he volunteered at a local farm, learning to grow crops in city spaces. His first season was a disaster. Blight ruined half his plants, but he kept going, driven by a passion he'd ignored. By 45, he was designing rooftop gardens for community centers, blending his skills with his purpose. "I thought I'd find the answer," he laughed. "But every year, I discover something new about myself." This ongoing rebirth is what makes individuation powerful. It's not about erasing your past, but weaving its lessons, failures, and joys into a life that's yours. You'll face resistance. People may call you selfish, old habits may tempt you back, but each time you choose authenticity, you grow stronger. You make decisions from clarity, not fear. You attract people who resonate with your true self. And you find a peace that comes from knowing you're living your truth. So here's the challenge. Take the first step. It doesn't need to be grand. Maybe it's journaling, taking a class, or sitting in silence, asking, "What do I want?" The fear, the uncertainty, the discomfort, they're part of the process. Growth hurts, but staying asleep hurts more. The world won't cheer your awakening, but it doesn't have to. This path is for you. It's never too late to live for real. Your life isn't written. There's no fixed destiny. Everything from here depends on you. Are you ready to begin?